So it's pretty lean times both in the garden and the allotment. Although there's lots of stuff germinating and growing and there's some winter crops still around, there's not a huge amount of green things to eat at this time of year, and there won't be for another 4 to 6 weeks while all those little seedlings get going. So at this point I always start foraging, because there's so many really good greens just for free all over the parks, along the kind of canal and bits like that. All those kind of forgotten bits of the city are actually full of food right now. Let's go down here. This is very young sorrel, which is growing up along the bank here, and sorrel likes grassy, damp places. And you can sort of tell it because it has this very distinct leaf, and eventually it'll get much, much bigger and it will have a pink flower spike. But right now the leaves are still quite small, and ooh, they taste incredibly of lemon juice. They're really quite strong. So there's a few rules to foraging that everybody should stand by. Never take too much, always wash what you pick. You should always ask permission. There is somebody somewhere who owns the land, and you are supposed to get permission before you pick anything. And always remember that no plant can repropagate itself if you've taken off its flowers or taken away its seed. So if possible, leave it in a state so that it can continue to come back next year. And it's always a really good idea to take a guidebook with you, because however sure you are, it's really useful if you can just check and make sure you're going to eat the right thing. And if you can't find it in a guidebook, don't eat it. Every part of a dandelion is edible, so you can eat the roots, you can roast them, and they're very sweet, nutty tasting, a little bit like parsnips. You can also then, once you've roasted them, grind them and turn them into a coffee substitute. You can eat the leaves. They're quite bitter. They're a bit like radicchio. My favourite thing to do is just to eat this bit, this blanched base with the flower bud inside it. And if you just peel it all off and fry that up, it's really good. It's almost like a Globe artichoke heart or something. It's delicious. It's really crunchy. It's kind of slightly a bit like celery. Oh, it's so good. Isabel, come on. Here's a patch of ground elder, which if you have in your garden you probably hate, and one way to try and beat it into submission is to eat it. You eat these very young foliage which is still really bright and shiny. You don't want the duller stuff because it becomes quite papery when you cook it, and it's no good raw. It's really too perfumed and intense. This is hedge garlic. It's just about to come into flower. The leaves are amazing, particularly at this time of year. Ooh, it's a strong one. So they start off tasting of mustard, so they have that kind of pronounced, bitter mustard flavour, and then they immediately turn into garlic. It's kind of like a Willy Wonka food. There's literally hundreds of free forage food out there. Dandelions may not be your thing, but there's probably something out there that you love, and it's a really important skill. No, you don't need to go and forage because you're so hungry and that's your only source of food, but it's a way of looking at the landscape and making meaning from it. If you know in a corner of the park that there's a damson tree that makes the most fantastic jam, or that there's going to be a huge patch of wild garlic to pick, then you start to care about that corner in a really different way. You want to preserve it, and it's just one way of really placing yourself in your landscape. So even if you're not taken by dandelions, or you don't think you want to eat hedge garlic, go out and explore and find something out there that has meaning to you.